This is Atlas's 4th session in the round pen, his 30th overall. I'm just going to work on the same few things that I've been working on. He's a little worried at the whips here, so he decides he wants to leave. That's all right. I'm just going to draw him back in, heel his hindquarters, and just have him face me. So every time he leaves, I'm not going to ask him to run more, because that's just going to encourage him, and we won't want the opposite. So there I'm just drawing him back in, having him face me, and then yielding his hindquarters. So when he goes to leave, I'm just going to say, no, can you just yield your hindquarters and look at me? That's all I want. And then I'll go back to what I was asking, which happened to be yielding the hindquarters anyways. But I definitely don't want to run and chase them and give them a punishment of running, especially hotter horses. Atlas isn't necessarily hot, but he tends to be more afraid of things. So for him, it's just important that I want to break up his train of thought. So he's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to leave. So I'm going to be like, no, let's come back and just face me and stand still. So again, just always balancing. With horses, you always need to balance them. Alice just wants to kind of run and panic a little bit and leave the situation. I'm just going to say, no, we're going to stop and stand still. And then here I'm doing some desensitizing. So we're doing the opposite. I'm just letting him relax, hang out for a second, and just think about the situation versus just panic and leave town. So that's what he needs. If you have something that's a bit more stubborn and pushy and dull, then obviously yes, that would be the opposite of dull, is getting him forward and adding more energy. So if you have a horse like that, definitely get them moving forward a bit, but again, not just round penning mindlessly to get him forward. So if it would be like, an example would be, you're asking a horse that's dull to yield their hindquarters. Atlas is moving a little bit here, so I'm just going to follow him, and then when he stops, I'll release and back up. So if you're asking a really dull horse, so again, like he's worried here, so he's like, I'd like to leave, and I'm just going to block him and have him draw in. Good. I'll give him a second, and then yield his hindquarters. I'm just kind of making sure he's going to face me, because he wants to just turn parallel to me and just kind of trot off. So I'm just going to be like, no, like we're going to work on on his attention to me. So that was really nice. He stepped over this way, he stepped over the other way. He's going to shake his head, he's going to lick his lips and just kind of relax a little bit. So that's good. I want him licking his lips while he's looking at me, so he gets a dopamine release while when he comes back from like a little bit of anxiety. So I'd like him to kind of associate that with me if I'm standing in front of him. I'm just going to fast forward real quick through the desensitizing, but this is important. So this is what I was talking about before, where he got worried and left. So I'm just balancing it out. So let's say we're going to do the opposite. We're just going to stand still and relax, and the whips are not scary. It's not a big deal. I think he was afraid of them kind of moving on the ground and then coming up from the ground. So I'm just working on some desensitizing there. Back to what I was saying before, if you have a really dull horse, see how I pick up the whip from the ground? He's like, oh my goodness. That I think is a worry spot for him. So if you have a very dull horse and say you're trying to ask him to yield his hindquarters, like I was doing here with Atlas, and he's just like not having it. Like he's just staying there half asleep. He's not shut down. He's just kind of a pushy, dull horse. Then I would ask him a bit harder with my cues and my energy to ask him to step over, and then I would get him going forward, maybe a lap of trot on the round pen, and then ask again, because he's kind of got forward on the mind, and then ask. I wouldn't just be like, oh, he's not doing it, so I'm going to punish him by having him round pen. That's not what we need. I just want a little bit of forward there. So it's all about balancing. So he's got some stress grazing. He wants to leave again here, but it's a lot less grazing than he was before. Like I think he's just trying to calm himself and kind of shut me out at the same time. So that's what he's doing with that, I think. But like here, like this whole time where I'm messing with my hat here, he's just paying attention. He's just hanging out. Not a big deal. There he goes back to grazing, but he's spending more time looking at me and paying attention to me. And there he stepped over a little bit. So he was listening, so that's great. There he crosses over. He keeps his head down, which is fine. But he goes ahead and steps over and is listening, so that's good. But again, lots of desensitizing with him. I find that the desensitizing with Atlas works best with positive reinforcement. So again, this whole the whole thing I'm doing with the Mustangs here, and really with any horse, it's just like a especially with them though. It's just a big journey. Like it's a big experiment. I'm just figuring things out, especially with these guys. Every horse teaches you something new, but with these guys, I'm really experimenting, seeing what I like, seeing what I don't like. What do I want to use? Just like in my program in the future, and just kind of playing with things. And I feel like specifically for Atlas, a lot of positive reinforcement and the desensitizing would help him a lot. So I feel like he's good with the whips. He's okay with them, but then like when I pick him up and he runs off, so he's not completely good. So I feel like adding in a bit more positive reinforcement when I touch him with the whips, letting him target the whips would really help him out. So like when he just, every time I come and approach him with the whips, he kind of tenses up and his head comes up. Then once I start touching him, he's fine, but he still has some tension and anxiety about the whips in there. That was a much better approach. I came up to him and he didn't really care too much. So I feel like he has some worry in there, and then maybe he shuts down a little bit when I touch him with the whips, and he's just like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's on me, it's fine. So I want to do some more where he targets the whip, and then every time I touches him, I click him and feed him and work on that a bit more. So he was ignoring me there. I just kept going with the whip, and when I got my crossover step, I let him go. He draws in, that's great. Work on the other side a bit. Good, crosses over. Ask for a bit more. Good. So he's leaving a lot less, and he was crossing over and coming toward me, so that's really great too. Really like that. I'm working a little bit of steering here, steering to my left and then to my right here. Good. And he wants to kind of leave. He's a little worried about it, but then good. He doesn't leave. He stops, he yields his hindquarters, and he comes back. So that was really nice. We're just going to do some drawing. I'm just doing like a little bit of a zigzag, some side-to-side stuff, because I want to work on the draw of him coming toward me and following me. And then also I'm working on the steering, because I'm using one whip to steer him one way and then the other one to steer him the opposite way. So we're kind of just doing two things at once here. So I'll go again and do some desensitizing, just let him sit and just relax, especially for him. If he stands there and you give him a minute to just hang out, he'll shake his head, he'll lick his lips, and he'll be good. So there we worked on some yielding the shoulders, and then this was him in the beginning a lot. He'll yield, and then he's like, bye, I'm done. That's why I don't want him to be quite as sensitive to the whips as he is now, because he'll move his shoulders over and then he just leaves. So I don't want the leaving. I just want hey, the whip means move your shoulder over and that's it. So that's why he still has some anxiety in there, because he is leaving. But I like to do this at liberty in the round pen so he can leave, so he can communicate clearly with me, and then he doesn't feel trapped with that halter either. So there was a bit more of a side pass than a shoulder yield, but he didn't leave, so that's really good. And I'll just work on some desensitizing with him, lots and lots of desensitizing with him. So from here, if I could go back, I would definitely use more positive reinforcement. We're still working on that now, though, so he's getting better. That was much nicer. He crossed over, he's looking at me, he's licking his lips. Very nice. So go ahead and do some more desensitizing, lots of desensitizing with Atlas. Atlas is not a confident horse at all. Castor is much more confident. Atlas needs a person to help him through things. So if I bring out an obstacle, he'll go over it with me. If I leave him in there with it, he's like, nope, can't go near it. He needs some confidence. So it's just interesting how different they are. But I'm asking him again here, just very, very, very lightly. And there he just kind of picked up his foot to go like he was going to go the other way. So I'm going to reward that, because it's not an overreaction. So that's perfect. Again, the whole balance thing right there, that was perfect, because he takes that step over, but he doesn't leave. So I'm going to reward the opposite of what he was giving me before. So he was giving me a big step and then leaving. I don't want that. I want just staying nice and relaxed, staying calm, giving me a little step and staying with me. So that was perfect. Do some desensitizing here. And again, like I mentioned in the previous videos where Atlas is in the round pen, I would have preferred that I used positive reinforcement for especially the sensitizing, but sensitizing as well. I feel like especially for Atlas, it helps build confidence for him and just keeps him more relaxed, and he doesn't feel like he's shutting down quite as much. So that's just something to think about as you watch this. Anytime he does something positive, like he steps over there, I would click and then feed him. And then at the same time I click, I would take my whips away. And then the opposite would be for the desensitizing is as soon as the whip touches him, I would click and then feed him. And then I would build up the time the whip is on him, and I would let him target the whip as well, which I explained targeting in a previous video, so he knows how to do that already. So we're just going to work on some shoulder yielding on this side after I desensitize. I'm just doing it really, really lightly, and he's being a little dull now, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I rather him do this than the running away, because he might be a little shut down. That's okay. I'm recognizing that. But I'd rather him kind of be like, I'd rather not move and think about it a little bit versus just run off. So I don't want him to be shut down, but I like this response a bit better. So I'm just going to ask him a little bit here because I'm trying to put just a little bit amount of pressure on him to where he moves over but doesn't leave. So we're on the balancing point with that there. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish. Go ahead, do a lot more desensitizing with my whips. Fast forward through all of that and then go back to yielding his shoulders over. But he needs a lot of approach and retreat to come up there. So he got a little worried there. He has a fear of the whip and the ropes around his legs. So he's going to work on that a little bit and have the ropes touch his legs and get rewarded for that. I'll just work on some desensitizing. I just started his face, work my way down, or started his shoulder, work my way down, and just kind of keep it nice and relaxed and repetitive at first. And then as he gets more confident, like there he got a little worried. I'm not sure exactly what part he got worried at, but we'll go back. He did stop and give me a good response. Like he came back to me and then I could go right back to desensitizing. So that is great. But I'd like it that he just is confident enough that he doesn't have to leave at all. That would be ideal. But this is a learning process. So that's how you learn. And a lot of them are going to be like this. A lot of them are going to want to move their feet because they're worried about it. That's why I want to give him that option. So there he shook his head, licked his lips. He goes back into grazing mode. That's totally fine. Let him hang out for a second. And I kind of fast forward through all this stuff so he's not grazing forever. Go back and do a bit more desensitizing. He needs a ton. Like he needs, see, even when I went to the other side, he was like, oh, I don't know about this. So, lots of desensitizing for Atlas. Atlas probably needs 60-70% desensitizing, and then the rest, the sensitizing, the moving him in response to the whips. But he needs a lot more desensitizing than he needs sensitizing. And then again, for your push horse, that's gonna be opposite. And then that could change from day to day as well. So it just kind of depends on the horse you have today. Some days Atlas is more confident than other days. So it just kind of depends, and you're always wanting to balance that out. And that's not just true for Mustang, that's true for all horses. So I'm trying to get him to yield his hindquarters and draw toward me a little bit here. He's more interested in eating grass. There we go. Get a couple baby steps forward. And he's like, maybe back up. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to follow him until he gives me the right answer. So I'm just going to ask him. I'm asking him with my right whip here, and then he overreacts. So I'm just saying, no. I'm just holding my whip up. I'm just keep asking. And then he decided, instead of just calmly stepping over, he just ran away. So I'm like, that's fine. I'll go back over to him, draw him back in. I'm just going to ask him again. There. And that was not a big deal. He just took a nice step over, totally fine. And so I'm just going to work on some desensitizing. The whips are not scary. It's not a big deal. Yield his hindquarters, really good. So he's really sticking with me there. So that was good. So he left, but he came back a lot quicker. I mean, even from the first round pen video to this one, he's coming back a lot faster. So that's nice. So I'm trying to just make some energy with the whips without freaking him out too much. That was good. I'll take that. And then do some more desensitizing. Really good. He shakes his head and kind of lick his lips a little bit, following me. He's got his ears on me. And I'm just giving him a little break here, a little mental break. He's gonna, he does that with his lip when he licks and chews a lot. So I'm just gonna let him hang out and then work on a bit more desensitizing. think for Atlas, he needs a bit more time with the desensitizing as well. So I probably should have let him sit a bit more and lick and chew and relax all the way between desensitizing sets too, because I think we can forget that desensitizing is worrying for the horse as well. Like Atlas is concerned about the whip, so it's not just all relaxation time for them. It's also a learning, can be a stressful time for them too. So I think for Atlas, I need to give him a few more breaks, a few more that are definitely longer, so he can get back to a more restful state where he's licking and chewing and thinking about it and coming down from that worry. So it's like right here, like he does the same thing. He shakes his head, then he licks his lips, and then he might roll his lip up or go to grazing. But this is really nice. He's just kind of following me around. I'm not using my whip. I'm trying to get into just him leading beside me, and he's just a little worried. I'm trying to keep my whips on the ground too, because I'd like to do some desensitizing while I teach this, because then he can watch the whip lash kind of go on the ground, and so we're at the same doing two things at once. If he's super worried about it, we won't use that, or we can just use the driving whip, which is a lot shorter. But I just would like him to kind of follow me. Here he's not. That's fine. Like I can go around once and see if he'll join up again on this side. I just went ahead and did that lap because he's got to get used to me behind him too, so not a big deal. There he goes, and that's why we do this spiraling. This is going to be very similar to there. He had shook his head and is licking his lips and relaxing. This is the same thing we do in the round pen exercise, where you're doing that spiraling and getting the horse to kind of hook on and follow you. Like again, he's not hooking on, that's fine. I'll go a lap and then try and catch his eye again. So this, obviously I wouldn't do this with, there we go. So once I catch his eye, I'm going to turn the opposite way and see if he'll kind of follow me in that turn. If he doesn't, it's fine. But I'm just kind of walking in little arcs toward his hindquarters. So I'm going to kind of break him loose here and like untrack the hindquarters, see if he'll go forward. There we go. But lots of bending, kind of bend the horse and get him to step underneath and then create that forward. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Let's work on there we go. So it's like a little bit of a lunge, because I'd like him to kind of go forward. He wants to get stuck and get worried. Like here, he's worried about the whip. I'll let him touch it, and then I'll ask him for some movement. So I'm tapping him on the shoulder here, and you can see his skin flinching. He's like a little worried about that. There he goes. So him standing there and his skin flinching, like he's like, oh, I'm not okay with that. He's worried about that. So that's just something to think about. Then he decides to leave. That's all right. I'm gonna ask him to come back. So I'm just kind of doing, like, he didn't want to follow me when I was walking away. So then I'm going to kind of have him do almost like a little lunge circle here, just to kind of get some forward movement. And then maybe I could like walk forward a little bit and he'd follow me. Feel his hindquarters. And then work on some desensitizing to kind of end it off. But the goal would be for that last thing that I was doing, where I kind of get him going forward and then kind of walk away and he'll kind of follow me. But he was kind of just going forward, and so I'll just end on him moving forward, not necessarily following me, and we'll kind of build on that. But definitely work on some more desensitizing with him. Like to end on desensitizing with him and start on it with him, because he just needs a lot of it, and to build some more confidence with the whips.